Hi, welcome to Conversations on the Socials. I'm Katrina, and today I'm going to be having a convo with Kirstie Cullingford. She's got a really powerful view on the carer's perspective in an end-of-life setting, and we're just going to have a bit of a yarn about that. That's what Conversations on the Socials is about. I started it last year because I just kept meeting so many really powerful, compassionate, altruistic women and having these awesome, meaningful conversations that would benefit humanity in general. And I thought, well, bugger it, let's just do it on the social media, because isn't it nice to have something of some benefit to humanity on social media rather than some of the other crap that we follow. So welcome, Kirstie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katrina. Lovely to come and have a chat with you.
Yeah, awesome. I just cut our conversation short before because I was like, damn, this is just too good. We have to record it. So we were both sharing how we'd come to this conversation frazzled and overwhelmed and tired from the challenges that life keeps serving up. And we got onto the conversation of a carer's perspective. What does that mean for you? Can we pick that conversation back up here with the recording going, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, carers are, in my opinion, the unsung heroes of this world. They're often behind the scenes. They're sometimes forgotten about, but they play such an important role. Having been a long-term carer of my late husband over many, many, many years, he was ill for most of our marriage. We were married for 18 years, but very ill in the last 6 years with one terminal diagnosis and one life-limiting diagnosis. So the role that I played during that time was obviously pivotal in keeping all the balls in the air, and that's what carers tend to do. They take on extra responsibility because they love that person so much. They want to help that person as much as possible, and it's just this constant juggling act. And I think, as I said before, the carers are often don't take enough care of themselves through this process because their focus is on their loved one and their families and keeping all the wheels turning. And don't often realise the impact that has on them until maybe after the event, after somebody that they've loved and cared for has died. So, I'm a big advocate for carers really reaching out for support, help, caring for themselves as much as they can through the process, even though I know that's easier said than done. Trust me, I know that. So it's the carer perspective in when somebody has a life-limiting or terminal diagnosis is so important not to forget. There's so much to it too. There's so much support that's needed for that person, because sometimes they're coming to it without any knowledge whatsoever. Like, where do I start with this? Obviously they've got their own grief that they're dealing with as well. And even though there's lots of services out there to support carers in many ways, some people don't really know that they exist. So it's wrapping some.
You're so overwhelmed that they're
overwhelmed. They have no idea.
It's like, do I access this service, or I'd actually just take some time to have a shower for myself?
Exactly.
That's what it comes down to, isn't it? It's like complete survival mode of. You really do need to look after yourself, but it's so hard to prioritize your own needs when the other person is in crisis, like potentially dying. It's big stuff, right?
Yeah. And when you're the person that you're caring for is has some sort of life-limiting illness, you actually don't know when the wheels are going to fall off either. So you're living in this you're walking on eggshells a lot of the time because you can't plan, because you don't know whether they're going to be well enough to do X, Y, or Z. And often your friends and family may not understand why you're saying no to things, because you don't know whether you're going to be able to go to that function or go on that holiday if the person that you're caring for isn't well enough. it impacts so many aspects of life, and I think that's what as a community it'd be great for everybody to understand that. I think generally people try to help as much as they can. But
people want to help, I find, in general. They just
don't know how to sometimes. And carers aren't very good at going, hey, I need some help. So there's that disconnect as well between people wanting to reach, lean in and help, but the carer going, oh, I'm feeling so overwhelmed. I don't really know. I know I need help, but I don't really know where to start. I know that was the situation for me, that I had lots of people going, hey, I want to help, and I'm like, oh, I just can't even think.
That's right, because you're it's almost like another hat you've got to wear, this project manager, to get your own help. And Ruth was mentioning in the conversation we had the other week that end of life services and doulas can be that person if they're accessed. Sometimes it's like they can
very much so
get the list of the people who want to help and actually start allocating them stuff to do.
Absolutely. There's also apps now that you can use. There's a help app where somebody can take control of the app for somebody else, and then people can actually join in and be allocated different tasks and jobs and things like that. So it sort of often removes the carer and the person that they're caring for out of the equation, which is great. I mean, that's been a fabulous development for this sort of environment. But you're right, end-of-life doulas can help even facilitate that, as well as be there from right through the continuum of life, really. End-of-life doulas can engage with somebody when they're well, which is actually often the best time to engage with somebody to get all the planning in place. Because when you're well, you can actually make informed decisions. You're not making decisions in crisis. You're making them with the view to, being prepared for what life might throw at you. And unfortunately, a lot of people haven't got those preparations in place, because talking about end of life and talking about end of life and planning for end of life, nobody wants to really talk about that. Yet it's such a gift you can give to your loved ones to have everything in place, so then they're not trying to rally if something happens. To get things in place and sorted. And it also gives people time to really discuss what they want, what their preferences are, gives them back the choice and the dignity when they're well. And so having those things in place is such an important thing to do. And speaking from my own lived experience, my late husband, he approached his illness and end of life in a very different way to me, and so which is fine. Everybody approaches it in a different way, but we, as young people, we were only in our 30s when he was diagnosed with his terminal illness. So we had no idea that something like that was going to happen to us. So and we lived with him in and out of treatment and surgery and things like that for many years, but we didn't have anything in place, and he actually didn't really want to address a lot of those things for the most part. So it was a bit of a tricky dance between the two of us.
So was his approach to it like, was it denial, or was it, I just want to focus on what I'm doing, and basically what you're going to do after I die is not my problem? Like, I'm just wondering, because I've heard a lot of different perspectives, like, I just want to bury my head in the sand, or, what was his...
I think he was very much focusing on living. And because he wanted to focus on living, he didn't want to necessarily address the aspects. He didn't want to address the aspects of potentially not being here. He didn't really. So I guess there was an element of denial, his main focus was on living as much as he could with the two diagnoses that he had, because we had a young family.
Yeah.
And, you know, even though, as I said, and personality-wise, we kind of both of us approached life in different ways. I'm a planner and an organizer. He wasn't like that. So
Yeah.
as in life as in death, you kind of approach things in a similar way.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, so he was just being him,
Yeah.
and I was just being me. And knowing what I know now, I may have approached things with him a little bit differently, but I was sort of flying blind. But back then, I was taking each day as it came, and
Who isn't?
yeah,
Like, we were just talking about that before. Like,
yeah.
for anyone listening to this conversation thinking that we've got it all together, we don't. We're just talking about how we're still winging it and still rolling with the punches, and
Very much.
just trying to show up with kindness and presence, and yeah, just still keep showing up.
Yeah, one foot in front of the other each day.
Yeah.
You never really know what the day is going to hold. That's something I've learned a lot over the years, and you have too, Kat, with all your life experience. You know, you wake up one day and think, well, this is what I'm anticipating to happen today, but then you just don't know.
No.
Life's going to throw at you, so we just have to keep going.
That's right. That's right. And living with that changes, or really knowing that, don't you think, on a cellular level every day when you open your eyes, changes the way you live. And I don't necessarily think it's for the worse off. You know, I think I actually live better now, knowing and being completely integrated with the idea that death is coming. I just don't know when. And I live with the fear of it not going in the order that I want it to happen, just like everybody else. But it also then forces me to get up and be grateful for the fact that I can do any of this.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. Being present in each day is so important, but it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Yes. It's really hard to do. And it takes a lot of practice, and I don't think any of us really get there really. But I think being present to preparing for end of life is so important. And it doesn't mean that it's going to happen. It just means that if it does happen, you don't have to panic.
That's right.
So having all your plans in place, all the documentation done, you know, even knowing passwords and things like that. You know, when after Mark died, he didn't. There was many things that weren't in place by the time he eventually died, and so I had to wade through all the changing names and things over to me in those 6 months after his death. And I remember having a bit of fun with it eventually, because utility companies were interesting to deal with, I can assure you. And I remember one of them, I won't say which one it was, but this is going back 15 years, so things have probably changed, but back then it was an interesting journey. And one of the utility companies, I wanted to change the name over to my name, obviously, and I had the death certificate and they had all the documentation they needed. And the lady on the other end of the phone asked me what the password was, and I said, well, look, he died, he's dead. I don't know what the password was. And she said, well, I can't do anything without the password. And I said,
you got the death certificate.
And I said, well, hey, I had a bit of this was a bit naughty of me, but I said, well, just a second, can you hold the line for a moment? I'm just going to dial heaven and ask him. And she didn't know what was going on the other end of it. And I thought afterwards, that's a bit naughty, but it proved a point, really, I guess.
Yeah, you got to those things are really, really hard, I find, like because your whole, it's such a big, divine, sacred, spiritual experience. And then it funnels down to this bullshit of dealing with bureaucracy. And it's not that the people on the other end don't care. They probably do care, but the system basically is like, oh, you're dead. Right. Righto. Move on like it never mattered. Like,
that's it.
And it can be, you can either, like you said, like you can either have fun with it and laugh, or every time you got to do something bureaucratic, you end up in a grief spiral crying on the floor. Like, take your choice, you reckon?
Yeah. And often it's the carer / next of kin / another family member that is doing this sort of thing, and it just smacks you in the face every time. Okay, it's a reminder, yes, they're dead, but can we just deal with this with a little bit of compassion? Like you say, it's not the people that don't care, it's the systems that and the processes that they have to go through in order to do these things, which probably are need to change and be more human and compassionate. So it's a tricky journey, but having things in place and having it makes such a difference. Oh my goodness, it makes such a difference. So if we can have those conversations about what we want, where we want it, how we want it, all the, here's the access to everything, here's access to all the things that I subscribe to, membership of, all those things. And we've probably all got a million of them now.
Yeah.
I've got my own paperwork and everything in place. And I did this exercise some time ago now, where I have documented everything that I'm a member of, subscribed to, utilities, you name it. It's all pages and pages of it. So my family know exactly where everything is if something happens to me, and it's all stepped out for them. This is that. This is who you go to talk to this about that, and because I don't want them to be having to deal with all of this when I die. So and like you said before, none of us know when that's going to be.
No.
Tragically, sometimes death happens suddenly, and we're just not expecting it. So having things in place is really important, and people don't often, you've got to sort of think about who you'd like to care for the children. If you've got, if you die and you've got your children left behind, who do you want to care for them? That's a big thing. That's actually a big point to think about as well. Because you can't just assume that maybe that person that you thought would pick up the reins will.
Yeah.
So it's
and their circumstances can change, and
absolutely.
Life. This is the bottom line: is that when we're preparing end of life stuff, it is really all just guesswork, really, isn't it? So it's kind of complex. And I was having this conversation with my dad because, that's obviously something that my mum gifted me, was this having a really clear instructions of what she wanted, and having that conversation with dad. And then we're like, oh God, this is depressing. And then I was thinking, and then we just decided, okay, let's not think of it like that. Let's think of it as in, it is a gift. It's an act of love between the two of us that we know and have these conversations in place. Yeah. So rather than thinking, oh God, like I really don't want to think about losing you right now, but let's think of it as an act of love.
And it doesn't have to be a morbid conversation. You can make it light, and you can make it fun, and you can it's great because you can actually bounce off each other and go, well, how have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And there's so many options, for pre-death, death, and post-death. As long as it's safe and legal, then there's so many different options. And I think a lot of people don't realise that they've got choice. For example, in New South Wales, you can have a body at home after death for 5 days as long as there's adequate cooling, and the room that the body's in is adequately cooled and free of insects and things like that. So people don't know that.
No.
Not everybody can stay at home pre-death, depending on the disease that they're dying from, and depending on all sorts of different factors. Sometimes, you know, people, their community isn't able to do that, and that's totally fine. But a lot of people don't realise that they do have choice. That's something that I like to advocate for, is to give people back choice and control of what they want to do in the not only through living with an illness, but in the lead up to their death as well. Giving them those options, giving them the resources, giving them the information, and then they can make informed choices depending on what they want. You know, for example, funerals. You can have beautiful family-led funerals. You don't have to go through a funeral director necessarily. So it's just empowering people with that information. Because, you know, as we said before, when you're in a caring role, and often these sorts of things fall onto the carer as well, you know, the funeral planning and the end of life planning, and sometimes they're just feeling so overwhelmed they don't have the bandwidth to think about what might be possible.
Yeah, definitely not the bandwidth to be thinking outside the box at that time. It's definitely better off done before, if possible, or to have somebody present who can make those offerings at the time. Like, even so, you know, even if they're not necessarily end of life doulas, but I would just love to see so many more allied health professionals and, you know, nurses and doctors and social workers and things be more comfortable around end of life conversations and know more about end of life stuff. Because what I found shocking to me was that when my mum was dying, it happened to be a weekend, and maybe it was just that weekend, I don't know, I'm not an expert on hospital administration, but there was not one palliative trained health medical professional available in the biggest hospital in the area the whole weekend. Like, all the dedicated nursing staff who were just absolutely busting their ass. Every time they needed to make a palliative care decision, they had to ring someone else from some other hospital and wait for them to call them back. It was just mental. I could not believe it. I was like, what do you mean there's no palliative care here? It's a hospital. People die on the weekend, like, it happens. So having people available, I reckon, for the carer to say, hey, did you know this? Did you know that? No pressure to make any decisions either way, but this is just giving you the info if you don't already have it.
I would agree with that. Very much so. Yeah, very much so. It can be tricky. Because I agree. I think even though they're in a clinical space, some clinical staff don't really, you know, are uncomfortable talking about death and dying.
Because they're really fixated on making sure you stay healthy and alive as much as possible. But, you know, that's not always an option.
No, it's not. It's not. So it's knowing where to go, who to go to get the information. That can be overwhelming in itself. Very overwhelming. So having somebody as a contact point, like an end of life doula who has got all that information, and we definitely don't make choices for people. We just give people options and resources, and then they make their own choices. But in terms of preparing for end of life, it can be done in little bite-sized chunks as well. You know, for some people, it's too overwhelming to think about it all at once. And it's just like, okay, we'll just have a look at this little aspect right now, and when you're ready, you know, we'll move on to the next one. You know, it might take 12 months for somebody to develop a plan of what they want.
Yeah,
that's okay. You know, some people might want to do it all at once.
Yeah,
again, that depends on personality. So it's about honouring that person where they're at with what they want to do, and not forcing them to make any decisions about anything if they don't want to. Sometimes people need to sort of sift through information and sit with it for a bit and go, okay, yeah, now I think I'm ready to make a decision on that. But again, it's great to do that when you're not in a crisis situation.
Yeah.
When life is sort of ticking along, that's the best time to put these things in place. So then you can call on them when you need them.
And I can very much relate to your husband's approach to it, because even though I didn't have thank heavens, didn't have a terminal diagnosis, they thought, they said it's curable, but you're still faced with advanced cancer, so you're thinking about, am I going to be around, and you do. For me, like, I can understand why he wouldn't have wanted to put any energy to focusing on end of life and wanting to focus on maintaining life. Yeah, I can understand that. It's definitely easier for me now to have clarity and clear conversations with people about, if cancer was to come back, what I want now that I'm feeling better.
Yeah.
And I feel a bit more comfortable, that I think, I think I might have a bit more time.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right. I think at the time I couldn't understand it because I was his main carer. And his wife. At the time I couldn't understand it, but it wasn't till after he died that I did a lot of reflection. I'm like, I get it now, I get why he chose what he chose. And I now realise that each person's choice and journey is so individual. And it's about just supporting that person with where they're at, not what you want, with what they want. That's really tricky when you're emotionally attached to somebody.
And doesn't that get blurry when you're the carer and the wife, and you've got, I'm assuming at the time your children were quite young, and every decision they're making is affecting you in every way.
Absolutely, Kat.
Tell me about how you looked after yourself in that situation.
I didn't, and this is why I'm such an advocate now. I literally didn't. I went from dawn till way after dusk, and at the time I was working part-time. Our kids were young, they were both at primary school. He was self-employed, and so he worked a little bit but not much. So I tried to keep his business running when he couldn't, as well as working, as well as managing the house, as well as in fact, I had 2 jobs at the time. So there was lots of different balls. Luckily, I'm quite a resilient person.
Really?
I just kept going, and we didn't know. He was in and out of hospital a lot because he was in and out of various treatment regimes over the years, and some really, really made him hit the deck.
Yeah.
And most of them did actually. Some were worse than others. So we were often back in emergency on a Saturday night, mostly at the Calvary Mater. So they were fabulous. The Mater was fabulous. And we were well known there. So maybe that's why they were fabulous. I'm not sure. But because he was, Mark was also quite a charming person. So he used to charm the medical and nursing. So they liked him.
Yeah. Well, it can definitely get you some better care if you're common to your carers, can't it? Yeah. Smart man.
Yeah, and I advocated for him through over those years and within the system. And I didn't realise that I was doulaing him until after he died. I think it was about 6 months after he died. Someone said to me, "Do you realise you doulaed your husband?" And I said, "What's a doula? I've never heard of a doula." And they said, "Oh, well, a doula's yada, yada, yada." Usually people know birth doulas, but they don't. There's growing awareness around end-of-life doulas. So I Googled it, and of course I've been on that trajectory ever since, and done quite a lot of training around that. So that advocacy, which is what a part of what a doula does throughout medical systems, can be very valuable. And it's not about being, it's about approaching and working with the medical staff. It's not about being aggressive or anything like that. It's just about, so because the medical staff do the best they can, you know.
They do. And honestly, I just, watching them, I'm just like, how these people are like literally superhuman. How are they doing this?
No. And they
like,
get,
respect
they have
nurses, respect doctors,
absolutely.
Respect. Yeah.
They have such, they go into the role with such beautiful intentions. And it's because they want to help people.
Yeah.
But they don't often have all the information about a person. That's what I found with when I supported Mark through in and out of the hospitals and things and clinics and things we went to, is I would give that extra information and I'd say, do you realise that yada, yada, yada? And they're like, oh, no, I have no idea. So, and that extra information forms a bigger picture for that person that they're caring for. So, and it can often inform some medical decisions they make. And so often carers don't realise that they actually can speak up and go, hang on a second. Actually, my husband's doctor used to, I think, because I'm a question asker, so I used to ask a lot of questions, and I think sometimes she felt quite challenged by the questions that I was asking. And it wasn't until after she died, she actually said to me, you used to ask some really great questions, but I didn't have the answers for you.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I kind of knew that at the time. But, you know, it would have been okay for you to go, look, I can't answer that question. Yeah. So, you know, with it, as a carer, you've got, there's so many facets to the role, just so many facets. But it's so important. It's such a pivotal key role. And
so many people are doing it unrecognised, you know, penalised economically because they're carers. They're mostly women in the world, you know. It's just...
And, you know, I think workplaces these days are a lot more compassionate than they used to be, for the most part. But there's that stress of trying to juggle, you know, I've still got to maintain my job and I want to and need to do this, and you're just stretched in so many different directions.
Yeah. And so many layers to it, you know, trying to find joy and hope and stuff in your life when things are going that way. And it's just, you're torn. It's a constant emotional, like every single day is a complex ethical decision-making marathon.
I like that, marathon.
It's a marathon. We are in it for the marathon.
It is a marathon.
Yeah. And how many, like what you were saying before about being an incidental doula, you know, like how many other people are out there too that have just been incidental doulas and not realising that's got a name for it. I know my mum definitely had been a incidental doula a number of times, probably her life. I think she was just naturally a death doula herself without it having a title or a name or having ever been compensated for her efforts, you know, just that's just who she was. So
and I think the role is very much emerging because we provide social, emotional, practical, spiritual support. We don't provide any medical support or advice. But we can work with the team, the medical team, and the care team. And I think as more and more people live all over the world, there's often families who don't have somebody nearby that can care for them. That's where a doula can come in big time and support that. Because as I said before, we can be there at every stage. You know, not all the time. We don't need to be there all the time, obviously, as the person needs it. But, you know, so many older people now are living without family members nearby, because we have such a global community now.
Yeah.
Often their children who would normally, one of them at least, take up a caring role, are living, in the next state or the next country, or we don't often have families close by anymore. They're often, further away because of the world we live in now. So often there's people out there that can't access a lot of support, or don't know how to access it, or have to wait long periods of time to access support through the systems that are in place now with My Aged Care and NDIS and things like that. So doulas can fill in those gaps as well.
Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking too, while you're saying that, I'm just so interested to hear what your learnings or wisdom perspective is on having dealt with that with young children at the time, and what your thoughts were on the grieving process, how it went well, how it didn't go well, what's changed. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a really good question, Kat.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, actually, I love talking about it because it's really important. So when my husband was diagnosed, my girls were 3 and 6. And then when he died, they were 9 and 12. So that just gives you a bit of perspective on the age they were at. So
yeah.
So they lived with their dad's illness for 6 years of their life, very in their formative, very young years. And my natural instinct was to include the girls. We were a very tight family, and my natural instinct was to include the girls in the whole process, age appropriately, of course. That was what I naturally leant towards, because I didn't want them to. I believe I know kids have vivid imaginations, and so I didn't want them to grow up thinking this was something that they caused, or it was a result of anything they did or didn't do. Which I know kids often think, oh, what have I done wrong? Sort of.
That's like their default mode.
Yeah, that's right. So I wanted them to know that, Daddy wasn't well, but we're going to look after him. And it's interesting because I look at them now; they're well into their 20s now, and it's really shaped who they are. But as I said before, I chose to include them and let them know age appropriately everything that was going on at the time. So I'd explain if Daddy was going to treatment, or he needed to go to hospital, or we were doing this or this. And what I found at the time, on reflection, is, and I'd say to them, any questions you have, please ask us. Don't feel like there's any silly question. So I always invited that open dialogue. We used to talk about things at the dinner table as well. So the girls would often ask, so Daddy, what's that? And why are you doing that? And so we'd kind of have this, I guess we established an open dialogue with them right up front. And what I found was, because they felt included, they weren't scared. So they kind of knew at each step what was happening. And even though that was hard, a lot of the time it was really hard, and that upset them. And
there's no way to get around the hard. That's for sure.
Is Daddy going to die? And I used to say, well, I don't know. But you know what? We're going to do the best we can to help him. And I said, I don't know. I can't. I was always honest with them too. So, and then after Mark died, death became an open conversation in our household. So with the three of us, we'd often talk about death and dying, and so it was not. I guess it was quite normal. Yeah. And it was never a morbid conversation. It was like, oh, what do you think about that? And what's your view on that? This is when they became sort of teenagers and older teenagers and adults. And I know there was probably sometimes they're like, oh, I really don't want to talk about this. But it has shaped who they are. And they've actually both said to me, when we have talked about it in the last few years, it's like, thank you for including us, and thank you for not hiding anything from us. And I remember one very vivid conversation we had as a family, and it was a hard conversation to have, but it was when we knew that Mark was in the active dying stages, and he'd been in and out of hospital over many years. And the kids didn't like it when he was in hospital, even though we used to go there all the time and visit, and they just wanted their dad at home. So he wanted to be at home to die. And we had a family conversation one night and said, well, that was when we gave the girls the information that, you know, Daddy was dying, and but we've got choice, you know, we've got a choice. We can, Daddy can stay at home, or he can go to the hospital, or he can go to the hospice. You know, we want to know what you girls think about this. Like, we want Daddy to stay at home. And it's like, great. That was the answer I was hoping for, because
you're like, God help me if they say they don't want to hear.
It was actually a really
they would never say.
I always find it an honor
to be part of it.
Yeah, and it was just great because we set him up in the dining room. Life kind of happened around him. People came and went.
So beautiful.
The girls climbed all over him. The cat was all over him. And it was, and you know, I had people supporting me to do that as well. So it was actually really, really beautiful. And I was really pleased that I could facilitate that for him, because that's what he wanted. But having that was because we had those conversations, and even though he did tell me what he wanted, but then I facilitated everything for him. So in those last couple of weeks, we did talk about the coffin he wanted, and the service he wanted, and who he wanted to speak at his funeral, and all of that. We didn't get to do some conversations, but we created something that he wanted, you know. So it was, and the girls were a big part of that, massive part of that. And it's really, I believe every cloud has a silver lining, and their journey with their dad, even though they would kill to have him back, it's actually shaped who they are now. And obviously it's been very hard for them to grow up without their dad, but there's been some silver linings along the way.
And in a way, it's like they got a really early PhD crash course in what life really is. Like, you know how we were talking about before, like the biggest mistake I feel is that in my youth, or was that thinking that life wasn't going to be this, you know. And your daughters, my daughter, they aren't going into life with some Disney
they're not
thinking that it should be this, and this, and I should be that, and that. They're just like straight up know exactly what life is on life terms, and that's how they're living their life, which is horrible and beautiful at the same time, right?
Absolutely, And it's real. I think it's
real.
It's real, and I think that's where it'd be nice to get to, is for everybody to approach this knowing that it's just real. It's honest and raw, and
100%. Thank you so much for sharing that. So powerful.
Somebody, you know, I'm all about helping people in this space. So if that helps somebody think about something a little bit differently, then it's all great. It's all good.
Great. Or if anyone's going through something similar, or know someone who is, you know, just hearing Kirstie's story and getting some words around what they're dealing with, it can be so helpful. And we're having this because Kirstie and I and Ruth and some of the other ladies that I'm going to be interviewing are part of this sort of Newcastle Compassionate Communities committee group at the moment. Where we just kind of all got together one Saturday and thought, how can we bring these conversations just basically to the dinner table where it's just commonplace. So we've been working to pull together this event that's coming up in October. It's called Death Over Drinks, 14th of October, 5 p.m. at the Grain-Fed Brewery in Lambton. Kirstie will be there. I'll be there. We'll be having some honest, real conversations with a whole bunch of people. So come along if you're interested, and join us for Death Over Drinks. If this sounds like, bring someone that you think is of like mind and wants to get some language around end of life stuff.
And bring your questions if you've got any questions. You know, there's no question that's off the table.
Yeah. So, or just bring yourself thinking, I don't know, I'm just compelled to come along.
Yeah, explore.
Yeah. So, and if anyone wants to get in contact with Kirstie or any of us before that, you can jump onto Newcastle Compassionate Communities Facebook group. It's got a page and a group, and you will get access to basically a whole community of like-minded people like ourselves who offer all sorts of advice, end-of-life services, blah, blah, blah. So thank you so much, Kirstie.
You're so welcome. It was lovely to chat with you.
Lovely as always.
Yeah. All right. We'll catch up soon. Have a great day.
Thank you. See ya.
See ya.